We are live. We actually welcome to XR Studio, Women in AI, XR stuff. We're about to go live, or we are live today, and we're going to have a few speakers talking about different types of AI approaches and processes and workflows, particularly also along with not only just deep learning, but also with VR and facial recognition and all that good stuff. So thanks for joining. I'm gonna
Is that from yesterday?
yeah, it is. I got like 5. Perfect timing. Okay, everyone, we're gonna start the evening with the presentations. Apologies for the slight delay. Just to know, we are live on YouTube, but it will be turned around soon. Maybe I'll turn it down. Are you recording? Yes. Oh. Live streaming. I posted the link to the thing. Maybe I could do. You want to hold this for now, and I'll come get it from you when I. Yeah.
I'm gonna be double.
So yeah. So wait, does this work? Oh wait. Beautiful.
Looks like it.
Oh wait, cut.
Wait, you're live.
There's no way to cut it.
Yeah, I have no idea how.
What it is.
Yeah, it's live streaming.
Just live stream. The recording.
No. I don't know. Is it Facebook Live?
I just discovered this phone. I didn't know somebody was actually.
Oh, see, maybe it's gonna move back over there.
I can reach it from here. Yeah, front row.
See if nobody actually on the thing yet.
Do not. Oh, no. Doesn't look like it.
I wanted to say to you really quickly, I would love to sit down and talk with you about the
Definitely.
project at some point.
Okay.
Follow up.
Hello everyone.
Hi.
I'm Jella Jian. I'm based in LA. I was here like the first day of the event, and this is my second time being here. I just arrived at 3 o'clock this afternoon, so it's good to meet everyone again. Just a quick reintroduction of myself is I have medical background, and then I work in AI in healthcare, especially AI in computer vision in medical images. And I have my own startup called Vizora, L-I-Z-O-R-A, and we are happy to share that we were just accepted by NVIDIA's AI deep learning incubator.
Woo! Congrats.
So that's something I want to share with everyone. So this topic is about new trends in AI computer vision and some small skills you need to build your model. So there are some new trends for computer vision, especially the AI in computer vision. This is just something I learned from CVPR. CVPR is like the top computer vision conference in the area, and nowadays it's almost every paper is machine learning and deep learning in computer vision. The couple of topics I want to share with everyone is self-driving cars. It's everywhere for computer vision, and embeddings, sensors and projectors, and 3D models from 2D models. And first, let's just see. This is literally the exhibition in the conference. Without knowing it's a computer vision conference, you just think it's a car show. Right? It's a car show. So you can see from that one is Waymo from Google. You can see they have a different kind of design from others. This one is Tesla. And this one, I believe, is Corolla, and this one is a truck. They literally self-driveless kind of drive the truck from San Diego to Salt Lake City. So that one. Why I'm talking about self-driving cars, especially for mixed reality, is one of the workshops for self-driving cars showed there are two ways for self-driving cars to learn experience. One is on the real world, on the real world roads. Another way is to learn from simulations. And all simulations are built from Unity. And even in one of the workshops, one of the AI experts shared that one of the reasons why Uber failed for their tests, we all heard about the incident. They heard one of the passengers. And the reason why they failed is they don't have enough time to train in simulation. So every self-driving car companies are hiring people who have experience in Unity. So if you have experience in Unity and you want to learn something in computer vision and AI, that's a very good way to jump into the industry. Self-driving cars. And the second new trend for AI in computer vision is embedded. And this is presentation did by Microsoft research. It's transfer learning and embedding using software engineering. Why we're using embeddings? And these are kind of, we all know how we can power by AI in computer vision. Yes, 3D models, understanding, we can reconstruct the 3D models from 2D scenario. And what is embeddings? Embeddings, if you ever train a model, you will know one of the key trend is transfer learning. That one, transfer learning, and there is a special term we call the bottleneck. bottleneck is actually the last layer of the model. You extracted features you trained before and use that bottleneck to train and inference your data. And that way your model will be smaller and quicker. And here's some examples of embeddings. You have the encoding from one picture and you get some representation and decoder from it. So you don't need to train the whole model. You only need to train the last layer and the 2 layer or 3 layers you build from that layer. And it will save a lot of time and save a lot of your life for mobile devices. So while we're using the how to use embeddings, first is to reduce computer times. Because to run a neural net model on mobile devices is really hard. There are a couple of constraints we have to consider for mobile devices. First is your battery and your memory, and another one is your hardware, whether it can stubborn or the computer. And second most important thing is to reduce the model size. So you don't have to run the whole model. You only need to compute the bottleneck layer of the model. And another big trend is to get 3D models from 2D models. This is one of the examples presented by Google team. This is literally a 2D picture, and you do some math calculation and project a 3D model from a 2D model. So imagine you don't need to build a 3D model in the future. You just extract all the features from 2D model and then to 3D model.
Is that used at all in motion pictures yet?
Not yet. This is only on R&D. Yeah, not yet in production. And this is one thing I like the most from the conference is one project presented by Microsoft Research. Maybe you can see this is not a real person. This is researcher's daughter. This is projected one. But how she did the projection is only from that one in his garage. So you set up like a Photoshop kind of a setting with sensors and projectors, and you can capture a real person model in a very short time and project it in HoloLens, I think, from Microsoft. Yeah, so that one is very interesting. Just one more. Here again. This is not a real person.
Well, she's real. She's just not real in the scene.
Yeah, not in real. It's very
It's a
impressive
ghost.
and how they set up the this part. He didn't talk about details about it, but it seems to like a very simple, setting that just like a photograph setting in the garage, and didn't take a very long time to do it. And this is presentation did by Google team. Perception.io, they are bought by Google, so their mission is very clear. Make real-time 3D human capture commodity for VR data. That would be our dream, right? So one thing they talk about is how to choose the right depth technology. The sensors, the projectors, a lot of choices. So what they projected, what is suggested is very detailed. This is a very detailed technical summary. If you're ever interested in this is a very good picture for it. Yeah, so they said the future is active depth sensing. It's not passive depth sensing, but active depth sensing. So how do you leverage all the current devices to do that? They suggest to run a model, run a neural network model on your phone to build the 3D scene from your phone. This is their suggestion. So these are the couple of new trends in the AI in computer vision. Another one I want to talk about is not in this, but AI in fashion. I saw one presentation by Alibaba Group. They have a one smart mirror. You can grab a clothes real time, and the mirror, you can see yourself just like a real mirror. And on the mirror, they can real time recommend you the price and accessory for the clothes, and it's real time, very quick.
Wait, can you see yourself in an outfit?
You can.
Oh, wow. I thought of that 20 years ago.
Yeah.
God damn it.
Amazon Look has something like that too, right?
Yeah, they have, but it's a different one. Alibaba has a whole smart mirror for that.
How much is that?
It's very expensive. I know the shipping price is $10,000 from China to
Damn.
US.
Just to ship it.
It's just the shipping.
Would it be worth it?
Yeah.
Think of all the trips to the store you could save.
But that smart mirror is a very special kind of mirror, and I think it's from Samsung.
Oh.
Yeah, but that one is very exciting too. So these are a couple of the new trends of AI in computer vision. It's very exciting. I like to be in those conferences because you can see what the future will be and what we are heading to. So a lot of things are going on for very exciting future for us. Especially another thing is for 5G. I think Qualcomm did a presentation about 5G. Probably in 3 or 5 years we'll have 5G. I think without 5G, any AR or VR will be really hard to do it, but with 5G, it will be.
I heard
fast.
they already have 5G in China.
No.
No?
No.
That's not true.
They have the technology kind of. Huawei in China and the Qualcomm in the US. They are actually working together to push 5G. They established a standard for 5G, but it's not yet.
It's not yet.
Yeah, another 3 years maybe. Yeah.
If you want to experience 5G, Bristol's on 5G testbeds in the UK. There's 4 of them, and it's really dramatic difference in what
Yeah.
it enables, and it allows super low latency and also much closer relationship with touch within experiences as well, which is quite dramatically different. Yeah, they've just tested a load of projects in the UK, in Bristol a couple of months ago, which were all running on 5G networks.
Yeah. So 5G is actually the most exciting thing among all these. Facebook did not present anything new on VR. That's
They're
very
busy.
surprising.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Pretty much their
They did a
stock
lot of
went down
AR stuff.
117
Yeah.
billion today.
They did what?
Their stock dropped 117 billion,
Yeah.
biggest one-day drop in the history of the stock
20%.
market.
There
Whoa.
was a great photo on TechCrunch of this sad Mark Zuckerberg.
Wait, what happened?
They announced that they didn't hit their mark for the quarter and that they don't expect to for the end of the year because people are leaving in droves and new people are not signing up and their ad revenues are affected.
Facebook.
Because they're so committed to spend, they've hired tens of thousands of people to get rid of fake news and to weed out,
Yeah.
the bad,
The things that made it
fake
engaging.
profile, the fake
Yeah.
It also growing like crazy, but that doesn't necessarily
Yeah.
make the financial system happy. So the growth curve doesn't actually match the valuation. And so things happen as a result of Wall Street, not necessarily having to do with all those dynamics, but also because Wall Street is crazy.
Yeah.
So that's it for I think for Facebook didn't present anything on VR or AR.
They did. They have a whole new standalone AR platform that they're
No,
building.
I mean
But it's not
in
a
the
video.
conference.
Oh,
In the conference.
Oh, okay. And the F8 conference, right?
No, this is CVPR.
Oh, that's different. Oh, you mean, oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's a separate conference.
Okay, yes, yes.
It's something especially for R&D
Yeah.
research. If they have really something exciting to present to the committee,
Yeah.
they will present. Facebook
don't.
didn't present anything.
But what about the AI stuff they came out with? The
Yeah,
Facebook
they
app-
have.
Yeah.
They have a lot of other things, AR and computer vision,
Yeah.
but not AR and VR.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and Google presented a lot digital AR in the conference, and Apple didn't present anything.
Well, that's because they're keeping it to themselves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very true.
I think Apple is keeping it close to the vest.
I would
Paris.
just talk shortly about how to build your own model. I think some of you are very interested in how to really build a model. I was just talking to Christy, what's a good sequence of learning to build your own model. I think the best way to do is first to learn from Keras. Keras is very clear and very documented language. It's very easy to get hands on it and learn the tutorials and learn the language itself and learn the model. TensorFlow or PyTorch is not really helpful for you to learn how the structure of the model and the different layers of the model,
Okay.
how to do that. And this is, I will do the line by line. So you installed a couple of dependencies from Keras. Keras have a backend with TensorFlow. So you want to learn TensorFlow or Keras is almost the same thing. You can build TensorFlow from Keras and Keras from TensorFlow. So it's almost the same thing. And we are using the transfer learning, just I mentioned, the bottleneck transfer learning, VGG16. VGG16 is a kind of old model, but a very classical model, and very easy to understand. So we import VGG16. This is the base model of the VGG16. There are a couple of things is weights. So VGG16 is trained on ImageNet. So when we import the model, we import the ImageNet. And this one is very important, include top false. Remember I talked about the bottleneck? We only train the top, the last layer. So we don't include the top layer. So here you include top false. And then we input shape of the image is 150 and 153. 3 is just RGB. So it's always, if it's colorful image, it's always 3. So the number depends on different kind of model. If it's MobileNet or MobileNet 2, it's 224. So default number is 224, but for VGG16 it's 150 and 158. So we just put there. And this is Keras sequential model. So this is VGG16. It's transfer learning. So we don't train VGG model by ourselves. We use all the weights and layers except the last layer. So we kind of get all the features distracted from VGG16. And we only train the last layer. And then we build 2 fully connected dense layer on the top of the VGG16 model. So you can see this is Keras sequential model. We first add the base model is VGG16, and then we add our own flattened, fully connected layer. On one layer of the dense layer is 256, and we use, these are all the magic number. This is all the knowledge here. So what kind of activation we use? Now the standard practice right now is ReLU. Before they use others, but now we find ReLU is the best activation. And second, we added another dense layer. The one is kind of classes. How many classes you want to classify? If it's just one class, you put 1 here. If it's many classes, you put 2 classes, cats and dog, it's just 2. So the activation is sigmoid. This is another thing. If it's binary classification, it's cats and dog, so the activation will be sigmoid. If it's multi-classes classification, it will be softmax. You just change it to softmax. And this one is very important. The base model trainable, they are trainable parameters. They are, if you print all the trainable parameters for the VGG16, you can see they are like 400,000 parameters. I don't remember the exact number, but it's a very, very big number. But you put it false. So you have a stable VGG16 base, you don't train, and you don't back propagating all the weights and parameters for those, so you put false on it. Then you compile the model. This is the thing. So the loss, you send it, because it's binary, so you send binary. If it's small classes, it's categorical. So again, you need to set up the optimizer. So we set up the optimizer here. And another way popular optimizer you can see is SGD. So the metric we use is accuracy rate. So this is the general idea how you build a neural network model. But as I talked with other members here, as in the real world, it's more complicated, especially if you want to bring your model to mobile devices. In the computer vision conference, there are like one workshop for 300 PhD students in computer vision. But when they ask, they will ask, how many have you ever deployed a model on mobile device? Only 3. Raise their hands. So bring your model to mobile device is very, very complicated. And another tricky thing for training a model, especially for nowadays, there are a lot of tutorials out there, a lot of like samples out there where you train them, oh, this is so easy, right? The accuracy just 96%, 98% is very easy. But in real world, the problem is those models are from standardized data sets. All the data sets has been cleaned and has been standardized just for seeing and training. But for the real world, when you collect the real world data, you have to reformatting the images, you have to clean the data, and then when you clean the data, you have to build your data pipeline for your training. When you start the training, you have to build the pipeline again to feed the model for the training. And when you start training, you will find, oh, this image cannot open. You have to go back to clean the data. So it's back and forth, very complicated. And then when you deploy the model in the mobile devices, you have to consider what kind of model are you using. So standard practice is MobileNet 2. But the problem for that is accuracy is not there. It's not Inception v3. So you have to get more data, have to build a more solid model, and inferencing on mobile devices is very tricky too. So that's the thing, how to train a model.
Dang, that was legit. All right. One more minute. Do you want to set up for a minute or two? We'll have to have minutes, but I'm gonna also get a charger so this doesn't die. Yeah. She can ask.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about this, but
Yeah.
with model sequential, are there different? What's a sequential model compared to what are the other kinds of models?
The sequential model is a model from Keras. They just named by sequential model. It's the model you can build by yourself.
Okay.
So basically you stack all the models together. When you build a real model like VGG16 kind of model, you just put model sequence, add com model to D, and all them stack together.
So this is just a sequence to initiate a standard model.
Not really, because sequential model is a name for a special kind of model in Keras.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like you're creating an object,
Yeah.
saying this is what's gonna, the abstraction that's gonna contain the layers of my neural network. So you have your object that's model sequential, and inside of it you add the component, you
Yeah.
add those 3 layers,
You
like
add all
the
These two are
base and the
different.
pattern.
These are the fully connected layer. So this is the layer after the bottleneck, after the last layer of the pre-trained model.
Yeah. So it's like you have because basically what's happening is it's talking to your GPU and telling you, hey, I'm trying to do something and access that memory, and this is the structure of the process that I want to work through. And neural network. Go back to that's just those as I was just using how my structure to be to then get share information that down to that lower level.
Basically, it's a structure.
Yeah.
It's a structure. Usually you will see You will see flattened. This is means a free vector. And or you can see some dropouts. So dropouts means randomly dropping around. So this is to fight the overfitting problem. You will see dropouts. Usually it's 0.25 for a couple of layers, and the last layer the dropout will be 0.5. So these are all the techniques they try to fight overfitting.
So what percentage of that conference you were at, what percentage of the talks, et cetera, were around AI driving, self-driving cars?
Half.
Half, yeah,
Yeah,
that's not
half.
surprising. That's the big hot
Yeah.
trend.
Yeah.
Okay, and then what percentage was in this 2D image to 3D model?
2D to 3D is very popular. I would say I've seen like at least 50 papers on
There
that.
is such a huge
Yeah.
market.
Yeah.
Movies spend so much money, they
Absolutely.
shoot in 2D and then they want to make it
Yeah.
3D. Painstaking, millions and millions and
Yeah.
millions of hours
So-
and dollars.
Yeah, it's just different kind of neural network,
2D to
different kind
3D.
of models, just to build from 2D to 3D. Yeah,
If
but
that could be automated,
Yeah.
that would be a huge
Yeah.
market for films.
yeah, but I would say if you look details or in depth into the paper, it's in purely R&D stage.
Right.
It's really hard to put in production, but it's in that direction right now.
Do you know if studios are funding that research? Like the big studios?
I don't think studios funding. I know Facebook is doing that, Google, Apple's doing that too. But I don't know studios are doing that. The only studio work at the conference is Disney.
Disney.
Yeah, but Disney, I talked to the person. Their focus is on AR actually. They want to build an AR solution for you to wait in line.
Yes.
That's
Right.
their big focus right now. They are not in the VR, but they are not that in.
Well, to be fair, they have the Imagineering team, which has been around for like decades, which has been focused on VR and R&D for
Yeah.
that stuff. So yeah, that makes that's been consistent. They probably know more than than anyone else probably at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's the thing they're focusing.
Yeah.
From another point of view, how does this use of the Keras model compare with something like Scikit Learn, and some of the other ones which you can access?
Well-
Someone's had those advised to me today as a way of.
Keras is actually a language kind of thing. It's Keras is kind of structured based on Python,
Yes.
but it has their own structures. Sklearn is one of the, but not really Python-ish, so it's really hard to understand the documentation. So, well, I would suggest if you really just a bit of it, just to run Keras. And another thing I talked with Christy is to build a model, run it, and get the right accuracy is really, really, really hard. Really hard. So if you really just want an AR or VR experience built based on AI, you can call API. You don't need to build your own model. You can call Google API, Amazon API. For general objects, they can recognize already. You don't have to build it. Because build your own model, for our team, it took us like 6 months just to clean the data and build the data pipeline. 6 months. And start training and deploy it, it's another like 6-7 months. So if you're just one person, it's really, really hard. Because even though we saw a transfer learning, we don't need to train the whole model, but the truth is, you still need a lot of data to feed the model to get the features right. So if you just want to build an AR or VR experience based on AI, you can take advantage of Google API, Amazon API.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, and next we have Jasmine. She's gonna build on that VR stuff. We'll build on top of that with mixed reality. And wait, you say it. Yeah.
Oh, it's USB to. Oh, that's strange.
Oh, another thing I want to share in the conference is like the participants is like 6,000 people, but in the conference there are less than 300 women.
Out of 6,000,
Yeah.
7,000 people.
Yeah, less than 300.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, those spaces are so far, like they're really male and white dominated. So I think like initiatives like Feminist AI and Radical AI are key to force that discussion and like establishing the voices of we exist in the space and are the way we want to like influence growth and innovation.
Do you guys have an adapter?
Yeah, when there's so few women, it's so difficult to be heard, taken seriously, listen. You could say the same thing. You could be the originator, and a guy will say it, and they're just
Actually, don't do it like this. You know, like
Yeah.
that's the mansplaining.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just like the slides I show you, it's like all the math models. I understand how the math works, but the men just assume you don't understand
Yeah,
math.
that's just-
Of course I know
Yeah.
that.
No, when there's too few, you just think
Yeah.
there's no power, so it's really smart to have your own AI feminist group. I need to find a feminist game developer, and I need to use this network. I'll put it out on the network. I'm ready now. I've done the research. I did the training. I know what the game should, the content for the game, and I need a well-placed, respected feminist game developer to team up with. Because I'm known in the visual effects world, not the game world. So I really need a game person.
What about I forgot her name, this lady that presented.
Brenda
Yeah.
Brenda Laurel.
Yeah.
I read her book. It's awesome.
I really sounds like
I reached out to her,
Yeah.
for sure. Thank you. No, she's the obvious one. I think she's a little too old.
No, but I'm saying
Yeah,
like maybe she
but I
can,
thought
like,
her
put
network,
you-
she would know.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm too old, so I need a nice
No, no, ageism.
40-something. Well,
Ageism.
but it's true, like this course I took, you can't be over 30 years old and teach it because the girls in college won't listen to you. They'll think that you don't relate to them. Even though it's the same data, they've done it, they've tested it, and we want to do something that really works, right? So I just feel like a game developer, 30 to 45, I'm not going to be specific, but somebody who's made it in that world. But again, that's a very male-dominated world. I just went in my LinkedIn profile, and searched game developer. I'm like, 200 came up. One fucking woman.
Yeah.
And I don't know that she's the right one.
Yeah. That's
You might have to be.
Or maybe I just need a feminist man. But I would love this game to be for women by women.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he can work on it, but I want women in all the lead positions.
Yeah.
I hate to be sexist, but
it's
I know, we gotta give them
Sometimes we have to,
I
yeah.
don't think that.
I'll just play those on my laptop. Yeah, that's what we'll do. We'll just play those on my laptop.
How are you?
touch your hair.
Almost.
I need to ask permission. It's so.
Okay, there you go.
Wow.
Thanks. I finally learned how to do it.
How do you
And then I'll
do
just
that?
play it.
I actually just go around my head and like twist around.
There you go.
That will take a long time, and then it stays that way for how long?
So you're eating for the vision?
Why do you have to watch
No.
it and do it again?
Yeah.
No, not yet.
Not yet.
I should say it.
Is that what you do too?
Yeah.
I mean,
Your hair just got it.
I'm going to.
I used to be like that too. I would just like put scars on, but then I'm like, I need to start getting because I buy all these products, and then I just I'm like babysitting. I think I have like $20 worth of products.
You're looking great too.
Yeah, I just use like $6.
If it's a
Excited.
And that's what works the best. Like
Yeah.
the more I mess with it, the more it goes. So
Yeah.
I just kind of ignore it.
Yeah.
So you don't even comb it.
I haven't even put it in years.
Oh
I
wow.
just don't do anything.
Yeah.
Leave it alone.
I know you probably would. It's better than long curly hair.
We're gonna call us woman in the act for nothing.
You don't just.
I mean, nah, it was like.
Wait, hold on. All right.
You don't have, like, hair down.
Yeah, I can't see you. Okay, I'll hold this one. That's okay. Thank you.
Do you need someone else to hold it?
It's just like I have to charge it at the same time, so
You can.
because it's like I only have so much battery. Huh?
do that.
Oh, no, it's okay. All right.
you a break.
Are you sure? Oh, thank you. I could use a beer.
You have to do each single one, okay.
Yeah.
Got
So
it.
like you probably I did it like this. Something like this all the time.
Not that.
It's live.
Yeah, sorry. I hate these new MacBooks because they have the USB-C.
Yeah, that's
They
all.
don't have, and an audio jack. They don't have normal stuff.
Yeah.
Apple really, yeah.
Their
Their
dongle
2015,
though.
no, their 2015 model was the best one.
That's the one I stuck.
That's
with.
what I-
Yeah.
Right?
I was like,
I told you,
no
I tried. What do
new
you want me to
ones.
do about it?
No
It's
new,
fine.
no new friends. No new friends.
Okay, so what I'll be talking about is proxemics, which is basically how, it's like how people communicate, or like how, it's how people communicate in terms of space. So meaning like how, like the distance between me and her is as if like she's a stranger versus if someone is more intimate and close to me, they would be closer by. And like how that could actually translate to mixed reality, and how that's going to have to, because once we get these wearable and smart glasses, like this is something that we're gonna have to take into consideration. So, yeah, what are proxemics and why are they useful to consider? Well, they're very visual, right? And the thing is, the modality that's typically used for VR and AR is strictly visual. I'll talk about why that's not good later. But since a lot of it's strictly visual, we end up like in AR and VR translating like certain zones because we know like, you know, what should be closer to us. I mean, there's a lot of optics things. Even with text, there's everything. There's text, there's like locations where you should put models. And these are like comfort zones that were defined. I mean, many companies like Samsung, Google, Sony have defined these zones, but this is like the typical zone. So when you usually have like a UI screen, it's like 3 meters away. If you want something still in the distance, it's about 10 meters away. And then further away, like maybe 20 or so meters away, you would have like your background or your scene box. And of course, everything's working within the field of view. The field of view is dependent on the device. With mobile, it's not necessarily a field of view. I kind of see it as a limited field of view, because when you're looking at mobile, which is why thankfully will evolve, you're kind of you're looking at a screen like the real world. If I wanted to look at you and I had a mobile phone, I'd have to shift it around, and it's a bit more difficult to work with. And so they're also very cultural too, right? Because the thing is, just because I think that someone should be 1.2 whatever away from me doesn't mean that everyone else thinks that. We each have our different, we each have our different perceptions of like how far or close people should be depending on their relationship to us.
Right.
And so this is actually like this is actually research that has been done, and according to different countries about in feet, because again, this is the U.S. I'm sorry for people who read a metric system, the normal one, but this is in feet. So you over there I'm really sorry. Yeah, and so this up here is stranger. This is intimate relationship, and then this is just kind of like an acquaintance for each of them. And you know, the U.S. actually isn't that. It could be worse. It's relatively okay. And this also will end up infringing on like different issues like privacy, right? Because if I'm wearing my Magic Leap or whatever, and I'm close to you, like should you have like a spherical barrier around you that lets people know, like can I change like my reality? Can I alter how they look at my reality? There's a lot of questions that it gets into, and actually like Tiffany and I talked about this, and that was kind of like a small part of the presentation this morning as well. Yeah, and so, yeah, most people's personal like space is the length of their arm. I mean, I didn't even realize that, but I think that's something a bit obvious. So it's like you take your arm, make a circle, that's kind of most people's. And if people are closer to that, it's like usually you're intimate with them, you're having a discussion with them, they're a lover, you know, frenemy, I don't know. And so yeah, the thing is that with mixed reality, like these certain personal radii will be completely altered. And so I think that what's going to have to happen is you're going to need some sort of indication that lets people know, kind of like lets people know like I'm approachable, you can like alter my reality, I can alter yours. You're going to need something like that. Because the thing is your entire body ends up becoming sort of like your domain. Does that make sense? So eventually there'll be a field of law that deals with this, but I'm pretending that we're living 20 years in the future where we own our bodies, that's all we own. The skin that we inhabit, that's what we own, and then everything beyond that we can put barriers up, but unfortunately, like because when you have two people in contact with each other, they're gonna be able to like make you look different, you know, based on like their whims and their preferences, which is kind of sad. And so again, proxemics are personal. And so this is a term, I use this, it's called deixis. It's a term that's like a cognitive linguistics term, and it just refers to that everybody has a deictic center. So literature usually is written from a deictic center. So, I mean, it's very obvious in a way, but they have a term for it, which means like if I'm pointing to her, that's not the same as if you point that way. It's just not the same, right? Because if you point that way, you're pointing to someone else. If I say tomorrow, today, it doesn't mean the same as like tomorrow. I mean, there's a lot of different intricacies, and it runs on different axes, which is like time, space, and the actual person and place. And so the thing is, we're going to need to be able to merge these sort of deictic centers of individuals. And the thing is, the intersection of those experiences are what's going to be called social experiences. Yeah. And so the thing is, when we're designing interfaces, when we're designing algorithms, they need to be effective, multimodal, and spatial. So the problem with effective is very tricky, right? Because a lot of times, so I do like AI, but the thing is, AI is like it's very symbolic, and I think a lot of people like forget that, which means that like it only can like decipher and conjecture what you tell it to. And effective computing is it's not a completely new discipline, but it's very difficult. Like processing an image, as difficult as it is still easier than thinking you can understand someone's emotion with an algorithm. I mean, heck, even humans can't understand other people's emotions. And then to expect us to be able to encode that into an algorithm just gets a bit tricky. I mean, there are companies that have been successful. So Affectiva, if you've heard of them, they have an SDK for Unity if you're interested in that. It works very, very seamlessly and very well. You can probably find tutorials on YouTube. But then also these need to be multimodal, right? Because we don't only have vision. I mean, a lot of times vision, you know, the reason why we process vision fast is because it's at the speed of light, whereas our secondary sense, hearing, is like processed at the speed of sound. And so we kind of like prioritize these senses, but all of what we do in terms of augmented and virtual reality is within the visual space. But in order for interactions even to be seamless, they need to be multimodal, right? And I'll explain why. And then also we need to be more aware of space. But I think everybody here is aware of this concept. This is just something to bring up again. And so this is my pet peeve with a lot of AR, VR systems, what I wanted to sort of change about it. So what we've done is we've just taken the typical like website layout and then said, you know what we can do? We can take those same rectangles and just plop them on a screen, and then that should work for VR. I was like, no. I was like, because the reason why it works is because this is already bounded by a rectangle. I don't think that like my line of sight is a rectangle. So to bound a rectangle into I would say like it's a frustrum, like a viewing frustrum. It works, but there's a reason why a lot of people will create VR experiences, and then they're like, oh, your experience is so great, will you make a start screen? They're like, oh no, that's like making a whole nother project. And there's a reason why, because it's very difficult to deal with like rectangular UI, it's not suited to VR. And so yeah, this is the typical sort of workflow. It's like, yeah, I log in, and this looks very similar to something we've seen. And then you type in something, you search. So if you've ever used like a Go gear and you're trying to look at stuff, and this is my one, it's just not working. And this, I've always been confused why people think it's going to work, considering we know this doesn't work. Like Netflix has not been working. I mean, I'm sure if you guys have Netflix. The thing is pointing at something as an input and then having text, that's not working. So if it doesn't work for Netflix, and Netflix already has like 100 million followers and there's a need for it, why would it work for AR and VR? The thing is we're trying to build the need and the use case for it. So why would we adopt the same sort of UI that's already been proven that people don't like it? We still do it because I have to watch, I have to watch. There's a lot of
The Flash.
You're white people, but and so yeah, like I said, current XR development is limited to creating visual content. I mean, even right now, I have to do this too. I have to get through it until, like, I guess, people, like my team realizes you also need voice input. So I'm like, please be. Communicate with them as well. Yeah, and so this is just all of the other senses. There are about 20 senses, but I mean, again, we only prioritize these 5. And then I don't know, so balance is like found in the inner ear. Acceleration, so the person that I sit next to has a theory, he's probably right, which is that humans are actually not driven by sight at all, they're driven by movement, like kinetics. So changes, like differences in things. So fluxes, and I do agree with that, but I'm not sure how to interpret that, but I agree. And the proprioception is like where my sense of self and my center right now, temperature and pain. And humans are very responsive to pain because that's basically what's been our evolutionary driver this whole time. Yeah, and so I don't think it's about what's the most important sense. Yeah, I don't think it's about that. I don't think it's about, oh, vision's the most important sense, hearing is, like, who cares about smell and taste? I don't think that's what it is. I think it's about what's the most important sensation when we're talking about virtual and augmented reality. And so, yeah, like I said, I think that this is my opinion, that the most important experience, sense that we have is just our sense of flux, which is our emotion and our response to it. And then I'm going to finally get into the AI stuff and the emotions. And so emotion, humans, or let me see, I should have done this. So yeah, how can we use artificial intelligence and mixed reality to promote empathy instead of promoting ourselves? Because a lot of these technologies are very inward facing. So you have cell phones, which have been proven by Google actually to have a sort of, although, I mean, maybe that's their excuse for not creating decent phones, I don't know.
She went there, It's okay, only one watcher.
Yeah, so what happened, so the thing is just the mere presence of a phone actually provides a barrier between two people. And I mean, she can tell you that because when I'm talking to her and I have my phone, it's like you're not listening. It's like, ooh, you can't even lie and say you are. You're really not. It's a barrier that's up between you. And I think it's something that's decreasing our sense of community. And I think all of us in here value community, which is why we're part of the studio. And I think we believe in AR and VR and AI as mediums to actually facilitate community. Yeah, and so the thing is, this is something that my dad told me, and at first I'm like, oh, because, if you're a girl and you study engineering, guys will tell you, if you get emotional, like, oh my gosh, you're being so emotional, be logical. And then I would always be like, Dad, they're so mean. They would tell me to be I was like, if I'm not logical, then he's like, and then this is what his response is. It kind of sounds like something out of Star Trek. But basically, he said humans claim to be logical out of advantage, not conviction. We are emotionally driven, which makes sense. So the thing is, I mean, we can get into how even the people who claim to be uber logical are not. So we say we're logical is an advantage, but everything is emotionally driven. Everything. So even product sales emotionally driven. Who you choose to date is obviously emotionally driven. I mean, sadly, who you choose to vote for is emotionally driven. Most things we do are emotionally driven, but it's sad that we can't admit that. We're very logical creatures. It's like we will never be logical because emotion is actually biological. So.
You guys have that you're going to get on social media.
I know. And so, oops, 2 ands. But an emotional, so what I wanted to make is an emotional tagging system that records and infers users' emotion. So through physiology, which is just facial detection, and sentiment analysis, and allows users to review how they felt previously, and then also allow users to see how other people feel with the out-facing camera. And so this was my use case that I came up with, and I tried to implement it, so I'm just going from the beginning. And so a lot of my friends are architects, so the way that I saw it was okay, you have an architect, she's going to studio, You know, she's feeling bad because architects are always stressed out. Like, we think we're stressed out. I don't know what they're doing at school, but they're really stressed out. And so then you press this, you click this app, and then it's like, I'm anxious, I have to finish something. So then, like, you're responding to the application, and then you do yoga because you're like, oh, okay, like, I want to feel less anxious. And then you come back and you're happy. This is obviously an ideal situation. There's things that could have happened in the interim, but this is just the idealized situation. So in devising the system, I had to think of like, how would you even begin to like devise a system? And so this was looking at it from just a user flow perspective. And so just record, like if I could record, add notes, submit, and then share an emotion with a friend. And then this is just a more detailed thing of especially men, if I don't want men to know my emotion, but I want my friends to know, or vice versa, or if I want like you to know, but not you, I can like send an emotional signature privately to someone. And so again, so back to the AI and why this is relevant to this particular talk. And so in order to do this, like she said, there are actually things you can use. So I used an iPhone because I have an iPhone despite Apple. And ARKit is very good for doing this because it takes point cloud data, 3D data. So the same, remember Microsoft Connect, the same sort of 3D point cloud data? So that's the sort of data that the iPhone 10 ARKit outputs. And so what we did is, I worked with a professor and we used 50 different people, different nationalities, races, genders, but their faces all look similar, which is very heartwarming. And also their expressions were very similar. There's a sort of a commonality to their expressions of these 7 different emotions. I got rid of neutrality and I got rid of surprise in the final prototype, but these are like the typical, this was actually the first person that was trained. This is their face. And so yeah, this is what the happy faces look like. And then also happy was the most separable. So separable meaning that it was the most distinctive because again, when everyone was happy, they had a big smile, they were whatever, whereas things like disgust and anger were very similar. And so like with sad is, but sad looks like disgusted, you'll see. So I have these different faces. These are all 50 of them. Then there's angry, and then there's disgusted, which again, a lot of people when they're disgusted will like raise their nose like that. That's usually an indication. And then there's anxious, and anxious looks similar to, a lot of them look a bit similar, and I think that was the problem with processing the data, is like, okay, how am I gonna know that this person is actually anxious versus not? And that's where AI comes in, because I can't even do that. I mean, I knew because I told them, right? It's like boom, 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 happy, sad, blah, 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 but the thing is, going back and looking at it, it's very difficult to decipher it. I only knew because I specifically told them at a cadence, like what emotion to show. But if you didn't know, I wanted to just make a neural network, and so you did a great job explaining, by the way. So basically I did a personalized transfer model using the data that I collected from these 50 lovely individuals who did sign waivers, okay? And like she said, 81.4% accuracy doesn't really mean much because if you look, like there's barely any layers that I use. Like I'm sure they both know there's barely any layers that I use. But again, there's just a bunch of tricks you have to do. It took a while. I guess the trick that I did is like usually when you make your bounding boxes for a convolution, they're symmetric, so like 5 by 5 by 5, 3 by 3 by 3. I made it a little asymmetrical, and when I did that, I don't know, and the sad thing is, I'm gonna be honest, just like you, I don't know why it worked, but I tried it again and it worked again, and I think that's kind of the problem a lot with these tools.
Don't worry about that. We have a
They're
term
black
for it.
boxes.
Black box.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's a black box. Exactly. So, because I'm like, you don't know why, but then the problem is I wanted to get this into Unity, so it couldn't really, and using Python with Unity is a struggle. But you can do it. It's very difficult, and you're gonna have to make like C# wrappers to even contain the code. Oh. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
But it's doable. It's doable. It's doable because that's what I mean. In order to make it work, that's what unfortunately had to happen. So yeah, these are the network architecture. If you want to see it one day or like have me explain to you, like let me show you the data, then I can show it to you. But we can move on. Also for ARKit, there's different blend shape locations, so a lot of people will use these. This is like a simpler way to do it, because sometimes you actually don't need AI, right? Sometimes you could just use blend shapes, and so this is something I'm showing you why make something harder than it needs to be. I mean, because life is already difficult, why add some more stress to yourself? So if you know when people are happy, they smile, and and then their mouth goes up, their eyes squint, and we know that that's a common expression, because again, Paul Ekman, I think his name is, in like the 1970s, went all over the world, and it's like, guess what, when people are happy, they kind of look the same. Like when people are sad, they kind of look the same. So it's like, if you know people have different, there are different, I guess, values to their eyes, nose, mouth when they have certain expressions, then you can utilize that. You don't need to actually build a model, but I still wanted to do both ways, because I think that that's good to, because you need to make sure that whatever you build is robust, and sometimes a simpler solution is the best solution. Yeah, so the system diagram. So the way that I built it is, in my opinion, a lot of emotion applications, they only look at your face, right? So I'll be like, hi, Ty, I'm having such a bad day. But then it'll still say I'm happy, because the thing is, there was a paper by Rosalind Picard, and she's the Effective Computing Group at the Media Lab. She wrote a paper that was like, just because somebody's smiling doesn't mean they're happy, and then basically put like a bunch of details about why we know that's not true. And so when all these applications are like, we're a good emo, I'm like, no, you're not, because I could be smiling, but I could be miserable. And I think we all know that we put on masks, so it's like you need some other modality to prove that someone actually is happy, is sad, is angry, is whatever. And so the way that I thought to do that would be best is voice intensity and words, right? So words sometimes don't match up with emotion, but they do. And the inflection of voice, everyone's voice is extremely different, and speech processing is a pain, and in Unity, you could imagine it's even worse. But there's still ways to build the model. But in terms of the words, IBM Watson, I'm sure some of you have used the SDK with Unity, it actually will, so it has its own sentiment analysis and tonal analysis, but I didn't actually like it. Thank you, see? Yes, I did not like it. So what I did is I made my own dictionary. I made my own, because I'm like, man, you really don't know people, do you? So I really just made my own dictionary. And it took me a long time. I was kind of annoyed. I made 1,000 words for each emotion that I'm like, because then some emotions fell in the middle, so I had to make sure that I'm like, that could be both anger and whatever, so then I just made a custom dictionary. But you can actually make custom dictionaries in Watson, so that was something. And so basically the way it works is at least 2 modalities have to match up for it to say you're happy. So it can't just be me smiling. I have to be smiling and be saying, I'm having such a good time. Then it'll finally match up and say, okay, I do know she's happy. So the whole point was for me to build robustness to the system. Yeah, we've already, and then this is just about the dictionary and the list. Oh, wait. This is a PDF. Okay, so I have to do it from here. This is why this sucks that I have to do one. Oh no. It's, let me
stuck?
just unplug this
Mhm.
and then just play it. Okay, here it does work. Gosh, this bar is annoying. I miss my 2015. Okay, I'm just gonna turn this around. Okay, let me exit out. Okay. I don't think it really matters what it looks like, but you could just. And I'm gonna have to turn the volume all the way up. Okay, so I'm gonna test. Oh, yeah, also I was chewing gum, so don't blame me. I'm happy. Says I'm not smiling, so it knows that I'm not happy. Okay. So let's smile. I'm happy. Okay, good. So now I'm gonna try to be disgusted. Let's see. What makes me disgusted? Oh, there was this really gross thing that I saw. It was about this little boy was eating his own snot.
Sorry, this is so
cool. Yeah, so. And just weird. I can get it out of my head, sadly enough. Okay, anyway, but so basically it detects the 5 dishes. I don't know why is it plugged into anything, because it's being weird. But then also this is the final.
Another video.
We'll just stay up here. Yeah, this is the final. So what I did was I kind of used inside out colors, which are very common, which is angry is red or pink, and then sad is blue, happy is orange or yellow, disgusted was green, and then anxious was purple, because a cloud over your head. And so the thing is, the different activity, this was just a mock-up, so it's you go in, you're telling it what you're doing, because maybe you have certain emotions that are associated with what you do. So then it starts out, you give it an initial emotion. So you're saying you're angry, And then the way that I prototyped it the second is that when it detects a facial expression, it reacts, but it won't change. Does that make it? Because the thing is, in order for it to change, it has to have the second input that confirms that it's going to change.
It's kind of like how you talk to your dog. And
Yeah.
Like, come here, stand back.
Yeah. It could see I'm really upset. It sees I'm sad, but then it's like I'm happy again. So basically, I kind of just did this sort of system. And then the way that I did this too was I tested. This is a really annoying graph. Don't try to read it. It's basically just these were all tests because if you look at this edition, you're like, man, you're really moody because it's like 244 different recordings that I took in places just to test, right? Or like sometimes I would be sitting at my bed because this was training data. So this just shows like change in state, and I kind of just modeled it like a clock diagram.
Was that built in Unity?
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah, trust me, it was a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
That's probably the only reason they hired me, to be honest, because I was able. So, and then yeah, these are different like recordings. So like you'd be walking down the street. It's like you have a float, you have a bubble like with you. I mean, hopefully it could look better one day, but it's just like it's floating with you and it's telling you your emotions. And it actually has, obviously, I just put a date stamp, a thing, and then I just made little emojis on this side so when it switches. And I tried to make it look as Apple-like as possible, but it's like you're trying to make UI for Apple in Unity. Oh God! But I tried to use their fonts. And then you have the different fear, anger, and this is like walking across the bridge for MIT. Then you're angry. This is at my friend's desk, who is the architect, and then this was my thing. And then the second, I guess the last thing I was going to show was this, or not this. So this is like my newer version, which basically just combines the states, right? So you're not just going to see like joy if I'm happy. You would see joy then the previous state. So it ends up becoming like an agglomeration. And so like after I did this, Stella had actually made a really cool thing in the editor XR for Unity where you could just like plop emotional bubbles down. So like if you're doing user testing or you're like in VR, AR, you can just plop it down like in the second iteration of editor XR, so then people can just see, your emotion, someone else's emotion while you're playing, because that's a good way to see like how people respond to your content. Yeah, that's it.
Did you choose Unity for any particular reason?
I'm sorry.
I mean,
It's the best,
I mean,
in a way.
yeah. The thing is that there was really nothing else that I could have used that would have been. I mean, the problem was, as she said, the problem was getting it in Unity from Python. That's the problem. That was really the only problem I would say, because IBM already has the integration. Everything else already had. It was just making the wrappers for some of the network code. That was the pain in the butt.
But try not to use IBM model.
Yeah, just make your own.
Yeah.
And actually, it's very simple. Like you could input stuff. Like if you go to the IBM website and you get your account, you don't have to know how to code. You could actually just like put in words. It's like you could put in whatever, like tell it like, oh, don't do this until you see this. You could just type it in. You don't have to like go through the code and whatever. So yeah. Ooh.
Oh, my bad.
I feel bad. Anyway.
I wouldn't want employers to use it. Like,
Oh, no,
you're
no.
sad, you're too sad a lot. I'm gonna fire you. But I can see some Match.com applications.
It would be good for HR to know like morale, like to measure morale in a company.
No, I don't even think so. I think that was the whole issue with like privacy layers.
Yeah.
Like you own it. So if you're allowing somebody this motion, it's
Yeah.
fine. But they shouldn't have like the jurisdiction to just see
Right.
it whenever they need to,
Totally.
right? Because people would manipulate each
It's
other.
a real dangerous.
Yeah.
slope.
Yeah.
Oh, for social.
Yeah.
The great application is for retail.
Yeah. It's good for retail, and also someone told me that it was probably good for actually like cars.
Yeah.
For cars like
Self-driving
autonomous,
cars.
yeah, for self-drive, for emotion. Yeah.
If they are tense, maybe you set them like,
Yeah.
relax or something.
Yeah. Because the whole point is it was supposed to be a way for us to empathize and for us to be able to understand our own emotions. Because sometimes you don't understand it. Like sometimes I get upset and I'm like, why am I upset?
Yeah.
I'm like, I mean, come on. It's like, I have a good life. There are people starving. Why am I upset? Or sometimes I'll like react too quickly to things. And then I get, and then, so it's good for me to look back. And so it started out kind of as an emotional diary. Because I think that like it is good to be in tune with your emotions and why you feel what you feel. Like no matter what I do, I will always be emotional because I'm human. But it's a way to actually like self-regulate and modulate your emotions as well.
I like little like Fitbit or the Apple Watch features where you're trying to monitor so much of us.
Sure, our mood diaries, but they're super manual.
Yeah.
And it's not telling you how you feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
It's emotional. Yeah. Right.
Oh, that's good.
Mental health applications would be really interesting.
There's a question in the back.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about how you thought about the applications of this with the Asperger's and with the autism.
Yes.
It's one of the really hardest things is actually
Yeah.
being able to, in many
Understand
common
others.
forms, is being able to understand emotional nuances and empathetic nuances.
Yeah.
And is there a way in which this works as a receiving, as a way of receiving information? So say if I'm somebody with quite severe, if I find it really hard to read emotions on people and was missing that kind of element of social engagement, and I could use it is this something which somebody could use as a tool on my personal phone, so I could use it to understand you?
That's what I had. So so I had a front-facing camera, which is you, but then there's also there's both the front and the rear camera on the iPhones, well, the newer ones.
Yeah.
And so I utilize both of those, so you could actually. And I always get that question every time I present, which is great. I got it in review, I got it at AWE, and I got it now, so it's good. But actually, I did take that into account when I did build it and I did a lot of user tests. And actually, the reason why I did it, I'll be honest, is because as Plurama knows, usually I feel like I'm very sensitive with detecting people's emotions. Like I can read people's emotions fairly well, which actually isn't good because if someone's mad at me, I know, and I'll probably apologize to them later. Because it's just, I don't know, but I just got, because you can just read their expression. There's something about gestures, but most people I was around, because let's be honest, it's MIT, they literally could not read anyone's expression. So they made me look nuts because it was kind of like gaslighting, like, you don't know what I'm feeling. I'm like, actually, I'm pretty sure that you're upset because blah, blah. They're like, oh, shit. And so I think what ended up happening is I did a lot of user tests, and some of those people were like self-proclaimed like autistic people, and even they admit, because what happened is it's very difficult like for them, but it also for them, it's actually difficult for me to understand their emotion as well. Because the thing is, it's almost like there's kind of like another layer. Yeah, and so so it was a friend, she told a story about like how she got hurt. Because she's like, yeah, I was in the kitchen and I was like playing with a knife when I was younger, then like I got like a cut and I was just like kind of I was disgusted. But she wasn't disgusted, she thought it was funny, but then the application kept saying that she was happy, and I was like, this application is nuts. I was like, shit, I need to be more robust. And I was like, what did you feel when you were telling this story if you have to choose from the 5 emotions? And she's like, oh, I felt happy. And I was like, oh. I was like, okay. I was like, because maybe in a way you overanalyze people, whereas the application's like, okay, well, she obviously looks happy, she's saying good words, why do you think that she's not happy?
Curiosity overcomes.
Yeah.
In certain, curiosity is your happy place, even in America. But I'm just thinking that as a way of it being distributed, that a lot of these charities are often looking for tools to help and support their communities, especially in the UK. And they might be very interested in this as a...
Yeah, I mean...
That could be a way for you to like explain your training model.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because I feel like, because I need more data first off, because 50 people's not enough, but I think I mean, I haven't really thought about that. We could discuss that one day, or we could talk about it after, because she has a great presentation. But I think, I guess when I thought about it more as like an academic endeavor than like as an entrepreneurial endeavor. Because again, it's very different. Academia is very different than industry, right? Because I noticed when I make something, I'm like, oh, I just love making it. Like I'll put it as open source, and people are like, wait a minute, you could have made money off of that. And so I showed her an app where someone did something a bit similar, but it was with only faces. So like your fish, and used to have them, and they're like floating, and she's like, darn it. But it's like, it has really low ratings because people are like, it doesn't work. I'm like, yeah, it doesn't work because just face isn't enough. And also you have to hold it up to your face the entire time. Whereas like with this one, you don't have to, like, it could do it based off your tone of voice and words, so you don't have to hold it up to your face the entire time. So, I mean, the thing is, for me, it was more of an academic endeavor because I believe in open source code. I've always been like that. So like again, working at Unity is very different for me because I'm more into the academic stuff, which isn't like, doing stuff for profit or doing stuff because I want to see a world that like, I want to see the world that, Philip Dick wrote when he wrote, Blade Runner, well, not maybe Blade Runner, because that's dark, but one of the, I want to see that world, like the world where technology like actually brings empathy. So I don't know, I think my focus was different. It was just on like that I want this to help. I don't have any way to monetize it. So the answer is no.
Once you bring all the entrepreneurial things into academic project, you kind of change the direction. You have other concerns too.
Yeah, I mean, there's just, and I mean, the whole thing's on emotion. And so, everyone I know that's so there's an Emotion AI Summit in a month. I think I'm going to go. But most people that are working in Emotion AI are all obviously women, which is sad that I have to say that, but it's true. They're all women, why do you think? And so, I feel like a lot of us, we're not doing it to make profit. I mean, I'm very happy with the woman who made, like, the Affectiva, but I think we're doing it because that's what we want. We want technology to bring empathy. We don't want it to turn out like. Anyway, let her.
No, I hear what you're saying. It's just getting exciting. I mean, I appreciate what you're saying because very specifically, I believe if you're talking about like Rana El Calabi with Affectiva, the research under Rosalind Picard, who started the whole affective computing. There's a lot of really interesting research there. The thing that I feel like happens oftentimes in this space, which is why I really, really loved your presentation, is the product itself or the research changes once it has to become a product, right?
Yeah.
And it's very unfortunate because then you're accountable to quite a few people rather than just specifically focusing on the research.
Yeah, and she's a very she's a very nice woman, and I mean she did say she's like if you want to you could she's like, but she wasn't advocating for that, whereas like some professors that I work with were advocating for that, like, oh my gosh, you can make a company. I was like, ooh, no.
But it is weird in the academic space because a lot of individuals, if you are with a university, you do have to fund your work outside of the academic space as well, so you do need that funding, so you kind of have that balance, especially I think with a lot of robotics companies too. Right?
Yeah. I mean, the research fortunately was like funded by the lab, and so the lab is the lab is like kind of like what made Affectiva, so it was fine. But if it was like funded by, like a lot of my colleagues were funded by Facebook, they're funded by Lego, just you name it. And so they do have to do projects that fall within the purview of that. But I was just funded by the school, so it didn't, like I could do whatever I needed to do. But because of that, I felt like a lot of people like a lot of people don't understand my mentality because a lot of people are like into startups nowadays. I'm like, no, one day, but I'm not mature enough.
Welcome to the Bay too.
I'm not mature enough one day.
Christine, do you want to get set up?
Christine. That technology could be manipulated. I feel like that's the first place all of our minds went to is like, if you know everyone's emotions, like, oh, HR, like when something is in the world, like
the privacy layers.
But don't worry about it yet.
Emotions really hard. It's really, really hard. I mean, it's hard to understand. Like even like you can vouch for me when you're like, why do you think that person thinks like that? And then I'm like, damn, I have to really think. And then I can like be like, well, their arm moved this way, their eye was like this.
A lot of it's unconscious though.
The way that they left, and I was like, look, it's just something that you pick up on.
And so much of it actually is culturally specific as well. So, So, case in point of that, we were working with an amazing artist from Jordan. She was asking me a question about something, so we sat over dinner. I kind of looked up to think, thought it through, came back down, and gave her the answer. She read that as I rolled my eyes at her, which is the rudest thing you can do socially. It took 3 days to unravel why she was in a piss with me.
Yeah.
Oh, you thought I rolled my eyes at you, whereas I looked up for information, scanned for information, figured out where it was sitting in my brain, and came back into relationship. And that's, there's a lot of stuff around that, which is really...
Yeah, I had a similar situation too. I think,
ESL, even here, like there's like lots of like like where people don't listen and it's pretty like what my thought process, my reaction, because what I'm doing culturally means something else.
Yeah. All right.
That's really complicated.
Enlightening stuff. Good conversation. But let's go. Yeah. So we'll have plenty more time to talk after. Yeah. And
I'm just gonna do the first half of this recorded, and the second half, the demo and the brief explanations for people who are here.
Okay, got it. You heard that first. You heard first directly.
Hello, I'm Christine. And what I'm going to talk about today is really just looking at the sociocultural considerations around artificial intelligence. So it's an honor to have seen these two lovely projects. And I'm talking here today about Feminist AI, which is a community AI design and research group that utilizes participatory approaches to engage in AI design. So we essentially do a lot of social AI design projects. I'm going to start out with some disclaimers here. I don't think these disclaimers, pardon me, having a hard time speaking today, are often said, and I think we should take the time to talk about some things when we are in the inclusivity space. I'm using the words inclusivity and diversity, but I do find those words problematic. Yeah, I think we need to be really mindful of how they're used, specifically in the corporate setting and what that means. So let's just start off with that. I'll also be talking about our community research group, Feminist AI. Something that I also want to draw attention to is the name feminism. And the name feminism carries a lot of baggage sometimes, right? And so a lot of times when we talk about feminism, people associate it with white feminism. And I want to be very, very clear. When we're talking about feminism, we're really kind of looking at bell hooks, referencing that feminism is for everybody, right? We do understand the history in that space, and we're trying to create this shared space together. Using other language when we try to get individuals to come to our meetups results in less female-identified, non-binary humans attending. So there's a very specific reason that we're using the word feminism, number one. And then I'm also up here, a white woman talking about inclusivity, okay? So let's talk about that for a minute. I try to speak and reflect and talk about words that come from our community, but you really, when you come into a space, need to own your layers of privilege, and let's just kind of start with that. And then lastly, in the presentation, I won't always use technically accurate words. So when I talk about AI design, I'm coming at this from a very specific design perspective, right? I'm not using a computer science perspective. So just work with me here. All right, so talking about AI simplified. So during this talk, I'm going to talk about why we need more voices in the AI development and design space. And then the second part of the talk, I'll give an overview of AI, machine learning, and Wekinator, a tool that was created by Dr. Rebecca Fubring. And here we're going to look at the current state of AI. So we're all aware of the unwanted bias and discrimination that can occur in AI, like image labeling, like predictive policing, which doesn't work and perpetuates discrimination against marginalized communities, and like in our smart assistants. So now we're all moving beyond this gendering of products into more of this humanization of products. So people are really realizing, hey, we should ask our kids to be polite to Alexa, right? Well, you're then kind of giving Alexa this human form, right? So not only are you're trying to get beyond the gendering, but you're really just going into the humanization of these projects. And we really see this in the new politeness feature added in Alexa. So it was created in a response to, I think, parents being concerned that they were commanding these intelligent systems, right? So in this pairing of AI with products, we start to see human bias evidence in these intelligent machines, which really reflects the cultural discrimination and unwanted bias. This is really interesting, right? We're using AI to show human bias. That's kind of fascinating to me. And if you want to read more, I mean, there's a lot of interesting individuals who've written about this work, but Sophia Noble recently has her book, Algorithms of Oppression. But you can really kind of start to see some of the problematic thinking in this space, and honestly, what companies are doing to fix these problems. This was from Wired in 2018. So the way, at that point in time, Google addressed the image tagging problem was just by simply removing it. So there's a lot of things that we can talk about in this space, but I guess the question is, how did we get here? And this is where we start to incorporate a little bit more feminist theory. So feminist AI theorist Alison Adams, an embodiment researcher in Catherine Hill, suggests that the Turing test has something to do with it. The Turing test is the standard in thinking about AI in popular culture. And it's really, according to some definitions, a machine's ability to exhibit intelligent behavior equivalent to or indistinguishable from that of a human. The Turing test relies on several assumptions, such as AI should model human intelligence, which I think we're all kind of like pushing back against, right? And intelligence can exist in disembodied forms across a computer connection. So you see kind of that disembodiment of the female form is evidenced in the voice of, let's say, Alexa, right? The Echo Dot, which only uses female voice. So removing this body knowledge when designing for intelligence, it affects the way we design for AI systems, agents, and models. This emphasis on disembodied design is a fundamental problem in current approaches to AI. And we know that embodiment is not algorithmic. If we look at Anne Catherine Hills and a lot of her research. So our AI community proposes that we incorporate unrepresented voices in AI creation to design for embodiment and address this lack of inclusivity in AI dev and design. And really that's essentially what we'll be doing in XR. So we're starting to kind of put these two worlds together and say, look, let's connect the AI space with the XR space. So is this disembodiment due to a lack of diversity of developers and AI designers? And I'm just going to show you some images from recent AI conferences, and I just thought I'd stick with the women at this point, and I just circled the women in red. These are images I've taken over the past 2 years. I found that the AI space is a lot less diverse than the AR space by far. And I do want to give a shout out to the individuals that I know of operating the space inside this room, and also individuals like Kate Crawford with AI Now, Sophia Noble, Joy of the Algorithmic Justice League, Allison Adam, and Catherine Hills, Rebecca Fibre, the cybercoding twins. There's many more female-identified and non-binary folks in this space, but there still aren't a lot, right? Some more pictures. I still question, will the AI space continue to be, as Margaret Mitchell of Google AI Research, this sea of dudes, right? So what happens when only certain voices are privileged in this space? It has a tremendous effect on our products, experiences, and access. And it also informs the way we design with AI. So I have a series of things, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And earlier I showed a few examples of problematic pairings of AI and products. I just want to show you a couple more. So this is Kaczynski and Wayne, and they developed an algorithm to detect sexual orientation.
Huh?
Yeah, so let's just think about that for a minute, and think about the ramifications of this. Now, let's think about, I remember going to a Grindr meetup quite a while ago.
Facebook?
I'm sorry?
Is it from Facebook?
No, this is not Facebook.
Facebook has another one.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Well, there are many problems in this space. So we're putting together and we're making. But you know, think about what it means to be out in a country when you have no choice, right? It really affects your safety. Here's something they just decided to train an eye on the darkest corners of Reddit. Great idea. And this talks about tracking, but also predicting moods with your girlfriend's period. So I'm going to also talk about something that maybe might not be as popular, but okay, why not? I'm here. There are some funding opportunities for diversity in AI, VR, and XR. So we know that there is a lack of diversity. We know it's a problem. And we see a lot of companies publicly promoting these diversity initiatives in AI and XR. I just want to pause and say that's something I actually really do like about this space. It's not over-promoted. You know, this is a space for people to come together and make, which I find pretty unusual, and I think we should kind of celebrate that for a minute. And we also have a choice in how we want to move forward in the XR studio, so I appreciate that. But here's the problem.
Yeah, that famous picture.
Yes.
Yeah. When you get the full picture, it's like, wow.
Yeah.
We're all left in the dark.
Is that Joy? Do you want to say it is
Joy. Okay.
I know. This is the best slide here. But do you want to talk about Lena? Just
yeah. I can tell you my own personal experience of that. that image is like a hello world. Line of the code. If you learn image recognition in computer vision, you will train from that image. It's like, let's grab an image. This is standard image. We'll train, but everyone's curious about this picture is why this picture, and if you Google that picture, it's a Playboy picture. Just imagine you are a woman in this class. You use this picture to train your model, and this is your first project, standardized one. You have no choice. They still do it.
They're doing this.
Every
It's like
class.
the main.
In every class I do, it's like, why is she still in the class?
Yeah, it's incredible. So, the only thing, there's so much more to the story, and you did a great job explaining it, but please just Google Lena and computer vision, please. But what I think is really interesting, and I'm actually quite a big fan of NVIDIA. I did go to their conference last year, GTC, and it was really funny to see one of the students, I think it was an all-male team, decided that they were going to kind of bring Lena back, you know. But it was quite interesting. So again, here's the problem. These opportunities are often contingent on the idea that we'll continue to work within a system that was never made for us, not made for our bodies, right? And these companies essentially want us to solve problems that they've created. Yeah? So they want to
For
pay
free.
us-
Very little.
They want to pay us to reinforce problematic thinking for product-driven solutions. These diversity initiatives, really we have to go in and fix these problems that have been created in the AI space due to a lack of diversity. And these teams, these companies, these organizations, they're happy to fund these diversity initiatives and talk about the need for women, diversity, inclusivity, enter in your key buzzword, in AI or VR, but often the people on their teams are all male and very white, you know? So what can we do? We can operate within the system, right? And we should, and we can support each other. We can also increase AI literacy and start co-creating our own AI projects. By creating non-product focused spaces for AI design and education, we can really create a community and start to kind of empower and support ourselves and community. So I'm going to show you 2 examples of co-created projects from our feminist AI community. Right now, we have a chance to critique bias in current knowledge systems with thoughtful AI design. And here's what my community and I made together. These are voice plugins to redesign the voice of Alexa. And it's a critical making response to the gendering and the humanization of voices. And what's interesting, I'm so fascinated by emotions analysis. I also have some problems with it, and I appreciate the way your project was quite thoughtful, and you could see your decisions along the way, but I'm going to zoom out from your work and talk about some of the things that are happening in the space. And oftentimes we have individuals utilizing these emotions analysis, and they're not telling their users that that's what they're doing, right? And that's a huge ethical problem, okay? So what we did is we talked about not only incorporating these like plugins and actually changing the voice of the Echo Dot, but in the process of doing that, utilizing something called like an earcon. So you have icons, earcons. So when a specific algorithm is being used, you know that it's being used. So if emotions analysis is being used in a conversation that you have with a specific agent, the pitch of the voice you're communicating with will change. This is really good critical thinking and design. You don't see this kind of coming out of a lot of these corporate spaces. And it's interesting when you just get a group of people together and they start making, they can make really interesting products. And then rather than simply responding to these problematic approaches, we can playfully approach and imagine new futures while learning a little bit about AI in the process. So here's an example of another participatory design project, Intelligent Protest, which allows users to engage in a protest remotely for a 24-hour period. And this was co-created and co-designed. And the main theme here is allowing access for individuals who can't go to a protest space, right? Who are concerned about their safety, who have to caretake. So it's really just kind of looking at new ways that we can start to utilize AI in a very social way. So in conclusion, inclusive design results in more interesting AI products with less unwanted bias. So now it's time we start to create our AI futures together.
Yeah, standing ovation time. All right. And
I'll
that
just turn
concludes.
off so I can do the second part.
All right. Thanks for joining us. Okay.
All right. So this part.